Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia for a Week 15 recap, and we're going to talk a little bit about the contenders heading into Week 16, and we'll narrow down that list in just a second here. If you're enjoying these videos, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Just past 16,000, so that's really cool for us. We appreciate everyone who's been listening to the content and engaging with us. I've had some awesome reactions this week. Unfortunately, no Jack today. A little bit of a stomach bug going around in the Farrington household. So Jack actually is afraid of stomach bugs, Ziggy. I don't know if you know this. Legitimately afraid of them. Since we were younger, you say the word stomach issues, he's like running away.
I don't blame him.
I don't blame him. No one wants to get sick. So we're doing just a Paul and Ziggy show today. Hopefully tomorrow. It looks like it's just a 24-hour thing. Tomorrow, Jack will be back. We'll be recording some Week 16 content on Tuesday night, and then hopefully it's following a Viking win. And the mailbag as well. If you haven't seen that, we put out a post on the community page. Apologies that we haven't done as many mailbags this year. It gets busy really quick, but that's no excuse for the mailbag segment is one that people love, and especially for members.
It's one we love.
Yeah, it's one that we love. For members, they get prioritized in that. If you want to become a member, you could go to our channel homepage and click join. We'll read as many questions as we can, but we'll always hit the member questions because we appreciate you guys who have joined.
And I've got a feeling, it sounds counterintuitive, but things actually slow down a little bit when you get to the playoffs. I think we're going to be getting some more regular mailbags back once that comes around.
Yeah, we'll probably have mailbags from here on out for the rest of the year. Maybe not next week, given Christmas and everything going on, but after that, you're right, Ziggy. It's kind of weird, but when you work in sports media, you get to the NFL playoffs, everyone's always so consumed during football season. But once you get to the playoffs, you just have one or two, maybe three games that you're watching, and each one is in its own prime slot. So it's a lot easier as analysts and as people who work in the field to just focus in on one game and then you're done with it. Like you don't have to go back and watch all these other games and read all these notes on teams. You're just consuming the few games that you have in front of you. So I love it. I love the playoffs. It's a much easier stretch of time for running the show here. But and the games are great too. You just want to watch them too. So all right, the plan for today, and Ziggy proposed this idea. I think it's a great one. We're going to go through the contenders and we're going to say what the biggest worry is for that contender as we approach the playoffs. And first, we have to decide who the contender is. Then we'll decide on just how worried we should be or how worried that fan base should be on those contenders. So why don't we start with the AFC, Ziggy? And first, what I want to do, we're gonna narrow down our contender list here. I'm thinking we go Chiefs. I'm thinking we go Bills and Ravens. Do we want to put in the Steelers or the Texans? Is there anyone else who you truly believe is a contender in the AFC?
It's hard for me to justify putting the Steelers in or putting the Ravens in if you're not going to put the Steelers in, given the Steelers, I think, through this point in the season have probably looked better.
Okay. All right. So we'll put the Steelers in. Well, 4 AFC and no Houston yet?
I mean, I don't think this Houston team is bad. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about them. I know they beat the Packers way back in October, but from what we've seen the past month and change, I haven't seen much to convince me this team's going to be a real contender.
Okay. All right.
It just takes more time for them.
All right. We'll do a little more Texans later this week because, again, we do have some people who like hearing Texans content, and we'll get a little more of that maybe in the mailbag.
And
so
the
let's
Texans
start.
have some big games coming up.
Oh,
so
they have
they'll
some huge
definitely
games.
be on our preview shows for the next few weeks.
Well, the next game they have coming up are the Kansas City Chiefs. So to me, Ziggy, the biggest point of concern, and you echoed this in our pre-show meeting, the health of Patrick Mahomes now becomes the main issue. There's been a lot of reasons the Chiefs haven't been viewed as the same team as they've been in the past. Although last year, people seem to forget last year, we were having a lot of similar conversations about the offensive struggles. And once they got to the playoffs, they turned the switch. But right now, this season, they find themselves, 13-1. It's an amazing record for how down people are on this team. They're 13-1, but Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain. The team says they're not too worried about it. How worried about it are you?
So actually how worried I am about this depends on how the Chiefs want to handle the rest of the season. The thing about high ankle sprains that's scary, they're calling it a mild high ankle sprain. Whatever that means, they're not giving us grades or much information. They don't have to. But it's one of the easiest things to re-injure of any injury you can get in football. You see this all the time, right? Guys get a high ankle sprain, they rush back, they hurt their ankle worse, they're out for the season. So I think for the Chiefs, the important thing for them at this point, this is when banking up all those wins earlier in the season is nice.
Yep.
I think they should rest Patrick Mahomes against the Texans. I think they should probably rest him against the Steelers. And you could talk me into letting him rest against the Broncos, though maybe that's the time to bring him back. Now, I don't think that's what KC's going to do. I think they're going to bring Patrick Mahomes back. I think there's going to be a higher re-injury risk, and I don't think he's going to get healthy. So I'm worried about it. I don't think that they're going to let Patrick Mahomes or make Patrick Mahomes sit on the sideline because, he doesn't want to miss a game. There's no chance Mahomes is saying anything other than get me in there. I mean, who's the backup? Carson Wentz?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's no Nick Foles, Carson Wentz, as we've seen. But no, I'm worried about this just in terms of Mahomes getting healthy because his mobility is part of what makes him special. And with those high ankle sprains, it's hard to run around. It's hard to plant your foot. It's hard to make your throws on time. Like all of the stuff that makes him so special just doesn't work when you can't move your ankle. So I'm nervous about it. I think there's a real problem here. And I think the only way for him to deal with it is to sit him and risk giving up the 1 seed.
Yeah, well, first off, we have to remember Patrick Mahomes has gone on Super Bowl runs with a bum ankle before. It's strange that keeps happening this late in the season. He winds up having some ankle problems, and he's so amazing that a lot of times he's able to compensate for that just because of his natural abilities. I actually disagree with you in terms of the 1 seed, just giving that up. I don't think you can just let that go. Because you have the Texans, and then you have the Steelers, and then you said the Broncos. Those are the 3 games left. They're all currently playoff teams at the moment. What I would do is I'd rest them for the Texans. And hey, if Carson Wentz wins, that's great. That's awesome. The Texans have been up and down this year, the good record, but strong defense. Wentz would probably struggle. I'd imagine they'd lose that game without Patrick. But if you win, hey, that's awesome. Then I'll probably play Wentz against the Steelers as well. As long as you have that cushion where you can afford a loss before if Buffalo were to win as well. Because Buffalo's schedule, I believe the Bills have a pretty light rest of the year. They have the Patriots, they have
the Jets and
the Patriots again. So they're going to win out. As long as you are more than 1 game up on Buffalo, who has the tiebreaker, I would sit Patrick Mahomes, give him time, let him recover, because I do value that 1 seed. I think you really want it. Right now, you'd be playing the Chargers, and we just saw if the Chiefs host the Chargers, that came down to a field goal last time. That came down to a doink field goal last time. So I want the 1 seed. Patrick Mahomes can play through the pain, but I'm not going to force him through until I really need to win. So I'd let him rest against the Texans. And I would say right now I have pretty low concern, but that injury risk is what bothers me. So low concern for me as well.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this Chiefs team is I think the concern, you're right, the concern about the ankle injury is perhaps relatively low, but the concern about the team as a whole, just the way they've played all year, I think grows. And Patrick Mahomes missing games, not being 100%, that certainly isn't going to help.
Yeah, and they've had that. This is what we were saying off the top, 13-1 record, but there are other problems. They've struggled offensively. The defense has been pretty good again, all things considered, but when you're struggling on offense and then you lose Mahomes for a few games or two, especially now in December when you'd like to get going, it's not ideal, but relatively low concern there. Let's go down to the number 2 team in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills right now, who beat the Chiefs, the only team to beat them this year. What's your main concern surrounding Josh Allen, who's having this MVP crazy season, and the Buffalo Bills?
My concern is not around Josh Allen, but I do have a concern for this team. And any Bills fan, I think, will be familiar with what concern this is. The concern is just the random meltdown. And I don't really know how else to put it. But like when this Bills team is firing, right? When they're beating Detroit in Detroit, when they're crushing the 49ers, when they're beating the Chiefs, they look like they're on top of the world. But every time, every season, there's a couple of times when this team just implodes. We saw it against the Rams. We saw it against the Texans. And I'm not trying to take away from those teams or act like they didn't deserve to win. But a large part of why those teams won were the Bills just having a meltdown. Whether it's Josh Allen going like 9 for 30 and McDermott blowing the clock against the Texans, whether it's whatever the end of that Rams game was, where McDermott just decides to call a timeout and lose the game. Like at the head coaching position and the way this team plays, there's always just, it feels like when they can't afford it, a meltdown. And I haven't seen much this season to make me think they've overcome that.
Yeah, and it is weird where the Bills, we talk about their playoff collapses that they have had those. But it's never really Josh Allen's fault when you go back and look. Like the Ravens, you talk about the Ravens in playoff games, Lamar Jackson kind of disappears. You'll have MVP Lamar Jackson, but then in the big game, he'll fade away a bit. That's something Lamar has to prove this year, and maybe a hint at what could come for the Ravens concerns. Josh Allen, on the other hand, we've seen him have these duels. Oftentimes, when they do lose to either Joe Burrow and the Bengals or Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Josh Allen typically is very, very good. You're getting that same Superman version of Josh Allen. There are just other factors that limit Buffalo, and it could be the defense, it could be McDermott, it's decision making. I think that this is McDermott himself. I can't go into a playoff game thinking, oh, McDermott's going to cost them here. It's kind of similar to Dan Campbell. I don't love the decision making all the time from Campbell, but I'm not going to go into a game with that as a high level concern for me. I will say the defense, and they're injured right now. They've given up 42 points or 40 plus points in back-to-back weeks to the Rams and the Lions. Great offenses. That is of moderate concern because if you do wind up going against the Ravens, I mean, what the Ravens score on them this year? They had 35 points, ran all over them. Like you could get in shootouts, but when you get into shootouts, that can come down to who has the ball last. And if you're going against Mahomes or Lamar, assuming Lamar shows up, that's where I can get concerned. So I'm moderately worried about the defense. Not so much Sean McDermott, even if history says I should say otherwise.
Yeah, it's the reason I didn't pick saying the defense. I mean, there's definitely problems on this defense, but there's enough talent there and there's enough guys. Again, I was really impressed. I don't care about the final score, about how they played against the Lions. Like guys on that defense have this year had a tendency to step up when the team needs it. Now, admittedly, you don't like saying our guys really stepped up when he gave up 42 points to the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff threw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. But it somehow felt like that was one of the better performances of the year for a lot of their important players. So I'm not willing to count them out yet. Yeah, no, it's true. But I agree with you that when you take the whole here, there are risks for this Bills team. And there's a reason they haven't gotten to the Super Bowl yet.
Yeah, it's funny that we talk about the Bills and the Ravens, these two teams. We'll go on to Baltimore now. But these are two teams that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have been two of the prominent figures in football for so long. I mean, Lamar's 2 MVPs. Allen's about to have 1. And for all the winning they've done, all the success that those two individuals have had, as well as the team, no Super Bowl appearances. Not even an appearance. So what do we have? Maybe 2 conference
Josh
championships?
Allen actually, he's close to holding the NFL record for most postseason wins without a Super Bowl appearance. He's got 5 right now. He's tied with Phillip Rivers. Lamar has 2.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable when you talk about how great these teams have been, that when it comes to the playoffs and advancing far, they really haven't gotten to any level where they haven't got to the Super Bowl. And that's something that you usually do. Like Jalen Hurts has been there. Burrow got there. Mahomes has been there every time. And that's the reason. But let's move on now to the Ravens. Okay. So I think there are 2 different ways that we can go here for the concerns. I'll take the way that you don't. What are you thinking as your major worry for the Ravens?
So actually, I'm not sure we disagree too much. I mean, I am worried about this Ravens team, and there's a lot to worry about. But the thing that, from what we've seen this regular season, has been the biggest thing for them has been the defense.
Shockingly for Baltimore, Ravens,
Yeah, well, we talked about this offseason, right? You just can't lose half of your starting defense, your defensive coordinator, your linebacker. But you can't lose every single person on defense and expect to bounce back and have one of the best defenses in the NFL like they always do. And the way the Ravens play football, they love to run the ball. They love to control the clock. It's important that you have a functional defense for that. Now, sometimes the defense has shown up big, right? We saw that against the Bills. We saw that against the Broncos. The defense has had good games, but they haven't had a lot of them. And most of the good teams they've played, like the Eagles, like the Bengals, like the Buccaneers, have put up 25, 35, 40 points on them. It's been this Ravens defense has had a lot of disastrous games. And you look at who they'd have to play in the AFC. You've got to play teams like Buffalo. You've got to play teams like perhaps a healthy Kansas City. The sorts of teams you need to play in the AFC are teams with firecracker offenses, right? They're explosive. They can put up a ton of points on you very, very quickly. And when you see a defense, I mean, the Ravens won both their games against the Bengals, but in those games, they gave up a combined 72 points. They won by 1 point in November, and they won off a field goal in overtime in October.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm worried if you talk about stringing games together, you need the offense to be 110% if you want to win those kinds of games. And I just don't think the defense is going to be able to play well enough where you don't need a Lamar and Derrick Henry to put up 35 or 40 points.
It's a valid concern. And the Ravens have been a pretty weird team over the past month or so. If we go back directly a month now to their game against the Steelers, they always struggle in Pittsburgh. We talked about that. Jack was very vocal about the Steelers were going to win that game. And it played out basically exactly as we expected. But you had that poor showing in Pittsburgh. Then they went to Los Angeles and they just beat up on the Chargers. I thought they were in complete control of that game. Looked like a Super Bowl caliber team against another playoff team on the road. And they come home and I'm thinking to myself, all right, you have Philadelphia now. Really tough test. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, Saquon's been amazing. But this is a game where you're at home. Prove it, right? Prove that you are that true Super Bowl contender. And they really get beat up by Philly in their own building. And then the last week, or just a couple days ago now, they beat the crap out of the Giants, which is something you're supposed to do when you're one of the better teams in the league. So we've seen this like weird back and forth over the past 4 weeks where they don't show up, they show up, they don't show up, they show up. And that is the concern for Ravens fans. Like you said, the defense is one of them, but I'm worried about Lamar in the playoffs, whether or not I think he's one of the best players in the league, but will he show up against the best teams in the league? Who are the best teams that they've played this year? It's probably the Steelers. It's probably the Eagles, right? Like it's the Chiefs.
The Bills.
Oh yeah, the Bills. I'm sorry. I missed that game. But in two of those games, Lamar wasn't really there. And he really wasn't there for most of the or for a portion of the Chiefs game until they turned it on and became unstoppable. That might even be a better representation of the Ravens, is a team that sometimes it just looks horrible, but then when they're on, they're as unstoppable as anyone in the league. So I would say that for that, I am very concerned. Very concerned about the defense and Lamar added together. They have one of the highest ceilings in football, but their floor is losing to the Raiders at home. That team still exists in them. And I don't know. I want to believe in Baltimore personally, but
this is a funny segment. What are our biggest concerns about the Ravens? Well, it's the offense and the defense.
It's the whole team.
And their all-star, all-world kicker is actually had a terrible year too. So throw in the special teams. But the thing that makes this different, I think, even from the Ravens teams of the past, is those Ravens teams of the past with disappointment often had the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Right? They had all of the advantages. Now they're looking like if they don't beat Pittsburgh next week, that's a must-win game. If they don't win it, they're basically locked into a wild card spot. This team, I do not trust them to go on the road for 3 games and make it out. And you can look, if you want to think of like the AFC quarterback hierarchy, right? You can look at their numbers in playoff games. Mahomes, he's played 17 games, 44 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Josh Allen, 10 games, 27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Lamar, 6 games, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Like, I get there's the running there, but it's not like Josh Allen's not adding a lot on the ground. It's not like Patrick Mahomes isn't adding a lot on the ground. So I'm more optimistic about this offense, I think, than you are. I really think Derrick Henry is the safety valve that the Ravens have been looking for on offense the whole time they've been in the playoffs. But I think you're right that if the defense can't step up, the offense is not going to be able to carry them through the playoffs.
Well, this is what bothers me about the Ravens so much. It's sort of the way I view them whenever they play the Steelers. I really do believe in them. I think they're awesome. But all the facts about who Baltimore is says you should be highly concerned about when they get into the playoffs. And I'll probably wind up reverting back. I think I always kind of liked Baltimore because I would root for them against Jack when we were kids. I would root for the Ravens. So I've always had this soft spot for them. But I do believe in them. I think that they are one of the 3 teams. I think they're better than Pittsburgh. I think they're much more capable of going on a Super Bowl run than the Steelers because they do have Lamar Jackson. But everything you see about them, if they have to go on the road to Pittsburgh in the wild card round, they very well might lose that game because that's what they do in Pittsburgh.
They weren't able to go on the road and win in Cleveland.
Yeah, I exactly. But maybe it's this weird thing. It could be this weird thing with the Ravens where if they wind up being a wild card, expectations fall off a little bit. That's when they'll go on their weird run, right? Like sometimes you see bizarre things like that. So I'm pretty concerned about Baltimore, even though I think the ceiling is super high.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this is the last thing I will say about them. Everybody's a choker until they're not.
Yep.
There are so many times when guys have been playoff disappointments, haven't been able to get it done, and we wonder when are they ever going to do it, and then they go on a Super Bowl run and nothing's the same ever again.
Yeah.
This could be Lamar Jackson's year. This could be Josh Allen's year. But there's a lot of guys I think that this could happen for. So we'll see what happens this year. If you can't take advantage of this Chiefs team now, I don't know when you will.
So if we're gonna loop in the Steelers here, I don't think I'd really have them in my Super Bowl contender spot, but let's put them in because we had the Ravens, they're Jack's team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ziggy, great defense. I don't think we have too many concerns about the defense. Defense has been, it's not shut down like it was back in 2009 when we were much younger, but it's a capable defense. As far as the offense goes, I'm assuming that's where you're going to go with your concerns.
It's not even the offense. It's Russell Wilson.
Okay.
Russell Wilson has played all right. He's played decent football. We have not seen enough from him this season for me to think that he can regain that like old time Seattle form that he needed to take this team into the Super Bowl. Because like you said, right, this is a good Steelers defense. It's a very good Steelers defense. But unless TJ Watt is getting multiple turnovers a game, this is not a defense that can win you games. Now, TJ Watt will sometimes get you multiple turnovers in a game. He was very close to getting it done against the Eagles. But you can't, and if you're making a Super Bowl run, you can't count on going 3 or 4 games in a row, having TJ Watt just win you games you shouldn't be winning. So that means the offense is going to have to do more. And what that means, really, the run game has been up and down this year, but it hasn't been excellent, is Russell Wilson is going to have to do more. Now, I think he's a serviceable quarterback. But in the AFC, think of the names we've been talking about: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. It's not enough to be a serviceable quarterback. You need to be a quarterback where, if the moment calls for it, you can drop 30-plus points on a dime. Can Russell Wilson do that? I haven't seen enough from him this season to make me think he can, because it's been almost a decade, it feels like, since we've seen that version of Russell Wilson at all.
Yeah, it feels like it's been that long. It kind of has. I'm with you. It has to be Russell Wilson, but I might broaden it a little bit to just their ability to keep up with, like if they go on, actually for me, it's can they go on the road and really contend with the big boys? Because I think that's what's going to come down to when they get to the divisional round, whether you're going to Kansas City or whether you're going to Buffalo. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. I could be wrong. They might beat Baltimore. They might beat the Chiefs.
The 1 seed. Who knows?
Then we have to reevaluate things. But from where we are right now, this Steeler team is the best version of the Steelers that we've seen in a number of years. I trust this team more than I did the Mitch Trubisky's, the Mason Rudolphs, the Kenny Pickett's.
Even the Justin Fields
version of the Steelers. With Russell Wilson, I do think that this is the best version we've seen in quite some time. But I still, when I look at them, when I watch them play, I go, all right, they're behind. Like when we saw them going to Philadelphia, that's watching it. What Jack says, like, yeah, they're on that second tier of championship contenders, and I don't believe that they have the ability to go in and win in Buffalo and then Kansas City back-to-back weeks. I just think in Kansas City, I think the defense will be swarming. It'll be all over the place. They won't be able, not that they won't be able to keep up, but they just won't be able to score like 20 points in that game. On the other side, if they go to Buffalo, I think Buffalo can boat race them out of the building because Josh Allen's just been unstoppable. And then I think, maybe have a turnover or two. So can they go on the road and win that big game? I don't think they can. A lot of that has to do with Russell Wilson. Will Russell Wilson, if you get prime Russ for like a game or two, all right, all bets are off because the defense is great.
Give us that Bengals Russell Wilson versus the Bengals, I'll believe. We've only seen that once though.
And frankly, you might see it again because the Bengals defense is so bad. But I just don't expect to see that. I mean, what have we had here? Since Russ has taken over, Commanders was a great win. Baltimore, great win. Like, they have had good wins. I can't see it happening in the playoff atmosphere. And Jack might disagree, but I kind of think he
Well,
would
it's time for
actually
him
be
to prove
good.
us wrong. They got two big games coming up. They got the Ravens, they got the Chiefs. If they can win those and Russell Wilson looks good, they're going to have to be taken seriously.
Okay, let's go over now to the NFC. NFC Contenders, Ziggy. I got 4. Detroit, Philly, Minnesota, Green Bay.
Yeah, those are really the only 4. I think the Rams and the Buccaneers are teams that could win a game. They are not teams that could win a Super Bowl.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And Tampa Bay, I'll say, I don't think they can win a Super Bowl, but that is a good team. And Baker's playing great football. I really think Tampa is someone that we need to pay a little more attention to than we've given credit. Why don't we hit them during the mailbag? Because I do want to talk Bucks at some point. But let's start with Detroit, the number 1 seed right now. The big concern, and I feel really bad for Detroit fans because they've had such a great season, but these injuries are just totally out of hand right now. It's unbelievable. They just lost Carlton Davis. They just lost Lee McNeil. David Montgomery, it looks like he might be out for the season. We've been talking about how the offense has kind of gone unscathed.
Out for the season. It's an MCL.
It's confirmed.
It's over. He might not be healthy for the start of next year.
Like, the defense has just been decimated. Aiden Hutchinson, Anzalone's hurt. They lost Davenport. I mean, I can go and keep naming people, but these are season-ending injuries for almost all of them. And now that it's leaking into offense too, Dave Montgomery is one of them. I think that this year he's finally starting to get credit for how good he is, but he's been one of the more underrated players on the offensive side of the National Football League for a couple of years now. Losing him is another big loss because Jahmyr Gibbs, you're able to keep him fresh with that rotation. I'm just wondering at what point is it too much for the Lions? And I think this is high concern because they could not stop the Packers. They could not stop the Bills. And these are the teams you're going to get in the playoffs, the high-powered offenses. They can outscore anybody, and maybe they win some playoff games 50-40, but you don't want to be in that situation. And I'm very concerned about Detroit right now.
I'm not sure we've ever seen this before, where a team is dominating the NFL, right? Obliterating anybody who comes that way. The quarterback stays totally healthy, and then just everybody around him goes on IR and the team collapses. Now, we haven't seen the Lions collapse yet, but like they've got 22 players on IR right now. It's unbelievable. I can't think of any other team, and let me know in the comments if you can think of anybody that's happened to. The only other team I could even sort of think of was like that 1 seed Titans team. But that 1 seed Titans team was not that good. They weren't dominating the NFL. They were getting lucky in a bunch of games. Like this Lions team was elite. And at a certain point, Dan Campbell said, nobody cares about the injuries. We've got to just step up. And that's true. Nobody cares. But it feels like the most Detroit Lions thing ever to finally get the dominant season. Everything's looking good. Your quarterback stays healthy, has a close to MVP season. And still, it all falls apart in a way nobody's ever seen before.
Well, you remember earlier this season when we were talking, everyone was getting mad at me when I said the Lions, like the Lions are a cursed team. We have a reel that came out. I was talking about how the Lions are a cursed team, and everyone's in the comment section saying to me,
"This is what you meant."
This is no, but this is sort of what I meant along the lines of, like the Lions have bad things happen to them. Like I said, did they escape the curse? Everyone's like, dude, we broke it last year. Like, no, you break the curse when you win the Super Bowl. That is breaking the curse. And frankly, right now, when you're watching Detroit, these injuries, it's unfathomable what's happening. So you're right. I didn't think or want them to fall apart in this way. It's not, even as a Viking fan, it sucks watching these guys go down. Like you don't want to win that way. And also, they are still the 1 seed. Like we do have to remember they're going to show up every week. Dan Campbell's going to have these guys motivated. It would be foolish to just write them off, especially with the offense.
Yeah, if there were any coach in the NFL that I would believe could take a team and just like start picking guys off the street and get them ready to play with a good game plan and like good motivation, it is Dan Campbell, right? This Lions team is always prepared. But at a certain point, when you've got to face the best teams in the NFL, I mean, we saw it against the Bills. It wasn't really a failure of game planning. I mean, the onside kick was weird and not the right call, but like that wasn't the biggest problem. He did that because the defense couldn't stop anybody.
That was the telltale sign. Yes.
Yeah, they didn't know what they were doing. Like, it's not that they didn't know what they were doing. It's just that internally they thought we are so screwed.
No one's talked about that, though.
Josh Allen. We have to do an onside kick.
No one's mentioned that because that's you watch them line up, and it was stupid. Like I think it was stupid. Most people who watched were going, "What's going on here?" but no one's really talking about the reasoning behind it. And there's no world where you can tell me that the thought in Dan Campbell's head right there isn't, we can't stop this guy.
That's
We
the
have
only reason
we
you
have
do
a
that.
better chance of trying to recover an onside kick with 12 minutes left in the game than we do of stopping the Bills offense. And you know what? They didn't stop the Bills offense the whole day. One time, right? We had one stop the whole day. Legitimately, go watch the game, guys. They have one stop, one forced punt. So it's a bad decision, I still think. I'd like to throw out my defense, but Dan Campbell's admitting right there, we got nothing. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's, again, I don't think that's like bad coaching, like to not be able to stop this Bills offense. It's just that they don't have the players. You know, you put Aiden Hutchinson, you put 5 healthy starting corners. I think that's how many they've got out. Like, it feels like it's Brian Branch against the world here on this defense.
That's what I said, right? It's like Brian Branch needs to solo the offense for them to get a stop.
So I don't know. If you're a Lions fan, you're really hoping the Vikings lose tonight. You're really hoping the Bears. When we're recording this before that game, so we'll see. You need some breathing room in this division to try and get guys healthy, right? You're 12-2. There's a real chance that you, with all these injuries and if you struggle and blink a bit, that you're going on the road after feeling like we had the 1 seed locked up just a few weeks earlier. So yeah, I'm very worried about this team. They need breathing room. They need to get healthy, at least as many guys as they can get. Because in the playoffs, I'm sorry, you're just not going to be able to win shootouts if you can't stop the opposing offense.
I think the Lions are so good that I still feel more confident in Detroit being able to get to a Super Bowl than I do like the Steelers or maybe even
they're
Baltimore.
Bona fide contenders still somehow.
Yeah, maybe even Baltimore. But I will say, of all the issues that we've addressed, and probably all the issues that we will address, I think this is the most significant one, and that's a testament to how good Detroit is. But it's unfortunate. So okay, the Eagles. We can be a little quicker on this one because we talked about it lately. But I feel like for Philly, it comes down to Jalen Hurts and that passing game, the passing game that got all the media attention when AJ Brown said, "What needs to be fixed? One word: passing." So. Saquon's been unbelievable. The defense has gotten better as the year's gone on. Philadelphia is maybe even should be the favorite to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC right now. And I do believe in Jalen Hurts to get the job done. I think when it matters a lot of the times, he usually steps up to the occasion. But and this is one thing we're talking about Jalen Hurts being a potential problem for them when they've won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row. So there's not too many issues in Philly, but I would say if they do get into a shootout with a team like Detroit or maybe Minnesota, maybe Green Bay, you need Hurts to be on. And he has had times this year where he's struggled. He's been a little inaccurate. He's had his problems. So when you're dealing with 3 great offenses like the other 3 NFC North teams, you need to be able to score with them. If you're in Philly, I think the defense will be able to help out a lot there. But if you do get into one of those games, do you trust Jalen Hurts enough to keep up? And frankly, I do. I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah, I mean, what you need actually from Jalen Hurts is for him to be able to step up when defenses sell out to stop Saquon Barkley. Now, we saw that the Steelers dared the Eagles to do exactly that, right? They came in with a great game plan. They limited Saquon Barkley to 65 rushing yards and 9 receiving yards. It was one of his worst games of the season. 3.4 yards per carry on 19 carries. Like, the Steelers' run defense took care of business. The question was, is Jalen Hurts going to be able to step up, get A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith the ball, and take care of the ball? Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of the game, it looked like they might struggle with that, right? There were a few drives that didn't quite go their way. But Jalen Hurts started clicking. He was on. He put together a lot of efficient drives, and he got everybody the ball. I'm not really worried once you hit the postseason about the kinds of attitude problems they've been having internally. At a certain point, guys really do just want to win. And if you're winning playoff games, it's hard for me to imagine A.J. Brown complaining about targets if they like beat the Lions in the playoffs, if they're going to the Super Bowl. So I'm not worried about that affecting things too much. Yeah. I'm confident that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to step it up and get it done when defenses sell out to stop Saquon Barkley. And that's why Saquon is so important for this team. When Jalen Hurts is getting all the pressure, when he's being blitzed, when his receivers are being blanketed, he can struggle. But Saquon Barkley means that defenses can't get away with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So again, not personally, not too worried about Jalen, but this is something that has been an issue at times, and we'll see. We'll see as the playoffs go on. But are the Eagles right now your favorite to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC?
I think so.
Hard not to say
It's
it,
hard.
right?
It's hard to see who else you'd pick.
Well,
I can't pick Minnesota.
Well, one of those teams could be the Minnesota Vikings, who currently are the 5 seed in the NFC, and the Vikings. So this hits close to home for me. Like, this is my team. I know them better than I know any team, including the Packers, including our most popular fan base here. The Vikings, to me, there'll always be like a plethora of issues that are probably more significant to me than the national media or even just casual observers would admit. I do think there are 2 of them that stick out to me, maybe even 3. Tell me which one you think is bigger, Ziggy, bigger concern. Sam Darnold. Do you trust him in the biggest moments still? He's been great this year, but that has to be a worry for Vikings fans. Is if you do wind up getting into these games with Baltimore or with Detroit and Philadelphia, and you go on the road, are you going to get a version of Sam Darnold that can compete with those teams and frankly not just compete but win? Or are you going to get the Jaguars version of Sam? On the other side, and this is a real worry for me, the defense has been great all year, but they have had some troubles against the elite offenses. They struggled mightily against Detroit for the second and third quarter of that game. They got picked apart by the Rams. They couldn't get to Stafford. I don't know what was going on. Like, they have had their moments where it's been tough to watch that defense. And most of the year, they've been great. They've bullied a lot of the worst teams in the league. But even Green Bay in the second half, or really the fourth quarter of that game, became unstoppable. I have my concerns about the defense, as good as they are, that if they can't get pressure against these elite teams, they're just going to get picked apart. So, which one do you think is bigger?
It's not Sam Darnold. And I will tell you what I think has really been the game changer. I was reading a Mike Sando article about this morning. Sam Darnold historically has been good when ahead and putrid when behind. That was his problem with the Jets. That was his problem during that Panthers run. Every stat fell off a cliff once he was forced to play behind and teams knew he was going to pass the ball. With the Vikings, it's been the opposite. You know, at the start of the season, we couldn't really tell how Sam Darnold was playing from behind because he never did it. We've gotten to see that the past month. And the answer when Sam Darnold is behind is he plays better. Completion percentage up. Yards per attempt up, passer rating up, EPA per pass up, explosive pass rate up, first down rate up. Almost any stat you could think of, Sam Darnold has done better when behind than ahead. So when you talk about rising up those big moments, it's hard to quantify what that means. It's been the regular season. He hasn't had real pressure on him in the same way, right? There weren't expectations going in. They've been the feel-good story of the NFL. But Sam Darnold playing well from behind, when the Vikings realized they were good, when they realized we're competing for a playoff spot, and maybe if things go just our way, the 1 seed, I'm very pleased to see that, and that makes me less worried. The defense is a worry, though, and it's a little bit like talking about the Ravens. I think our defense is better than the Ravens' defense, but the question isn't whether the Vikings' defense will be acceptable. It'll be acceptable. The question is, like, will they be able to avoid the collapses where if you're giving up 30 points or more, you need Sam Darnold, the Vikings offense, to match that? It's just hard to do that. And in the NFC, you've got a lot of the best offenses in the NFL. Now, I'm maybe not as worried about that as you. I know you're right. They've given up some points to good offenses, but like giving up 31 points to Detroit doesn't freak me out that much. Giving up 29 to Green Bay, I know that's not what you want to see.
I mean, I'm just scarred, man. I'm just scarred.
No, a lot of teams. Who's done a better job containing the Lions' offense?
Oh no, I totally get it. I totally get it. I'm just scarred from the past, and that's why I'm worried.
It's certainly a bigger worry. I mean, when the Vikings lose to the Bears tonight, then I'm going to be freaking out. But
please, no.
No, I understand where you're coming from. I totally get it. But I don't know. This Vikings team, I don't think they're the best team in the NFC. I think they're maybe the 3rd best team with all these Lions injuries, maybe the 2nd best team. But it just doesn't feel like they have any glaring weaknesses other than what if Sam Darnold looks like he's in New York again?
Yeah, and Darnold also, like, I do trust Sam. That's probably why my heart will be ripped out. But against the Bears, clutch drive to win the game. Clutch drive that should have won the game, then a clutch drive in overtime to win the game. Did it against the Cardinals. He did against the Packers when Green Bay got that game close, so we needed a drive. Sam got down the field, got us a field goal to go up 9 points. Like he has been.
That was the Sam Darnold that had before that put up 0 points in the second half.
Yeah, no, he had, but also, he had the interception that should have been called back. Like there, I think Sam, for the most part this season, I can only think of the Rams game where he had the face mask. Right, the face mask was when we were down 8. That was one time we didn't convert when we had to, and that one I'm willing to give leeway, even though that was just a bad game for us. And then was the Lions. We had the 3rd and 4 with a chance to kind of put the game out of reach. It's like one play. There's really like one play this year where Sam has failed, and in those situations. So I do trust them, and I do trust the team, and that's why I'm likely to be really, really upset in January. But whatever.
That video will do great.
I'm a believer. So yeah. But that video will do great. So, all right, the last team we'll talk about now, the Green Bay Packers, who have been playing good football lately. Really impressive performance in Seattle. One of their better complete team victories of the season. Defensively, they were great. Jordan Love was awesome. Josh Jacobs, great on the first drive. Quieter the rest of the game. Thought LaFleur actually called a great game, too. Very creative. Romeo Doubs stepped up and was awesome. Edrin Cooper, the rookie, he came back, and he my gosh, what a performance he had. The Packers are one of those teams where I don't think there's a lot of flaws on them. I think they're a very complete football team, and that's what you saw against Seattle. My biggest worry for them, and similar to the Eagles in a way, is I think they're just great across the board. But if it comes down to them going to Philly, going to Detroit, going to Minnesota, whatever it might be, even if it's Seattle again, if Jordan Love doesn't play like a superstar, I don't know if I believe that they can actually win the Super Bowl. And they might even go to the championship game. I think their team is good enough to advance a couple rounds if Jordan's not playing at superstar level. But to win a Super Bowl and beat the teams that they're going to have to, I think you're going to need great Jordan Love. And I believe he can play that way. I really do. I'd say it's not a huge concern to me, but I would say that's the worry is what if he just plays mediocre football and has those mistakes he had earlier in the year where he's turning the ball over and failing in the red zone. That to me is the biggest concern for Packer fans, which in all things considered, not that bad of a concern because he's been playing great since the bye.
Yeah, for me, it's not what if Jordan Love plays mediocre football. I'd reframe it. Just what if he plays merely good football? I don't think Jordan Love's going to sink down to being an average quarterback. He's been quietly having one of the best seasons in the NFL this year, if you look at things a little bit more closely than box score. But when you talk about this Packers defense, I think you have to sit back and wonder, besides the Malik Willis games, which were just weird and different, how many games has the defense actually won the Packers this year? I mean, you could look at the Rams game if you wanted. That was like a solid performance, but not elite.
Yeah, but also no Cooper
Texans
Kupp or
performance was all right.
No Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, it's the defense played okay against a demolished team. I think the Texans game is a good one to point at. Joe Mixon had his way, but CJ Stroud had a horrific game. Admittedly, no Nico Collins in that one, but still. The defense has not won the Packers games. It's stopped them from losing games. It's meant that when Jordan Love plays great against the Dolphins or the Seahawks or the 49ers or even like the Bears, the defense just holds up their end of the bargain. Right against the Jaguars, the offense had a good day. It was sort of the same thing. Not Jordan Love's best game, but like Josh Jacobs had a great game. So all that to say, I think you're right, not to focus on this defense. The question is, can Jordan Love go from playing good football, the kind of football that like leaves you with close losses to the Lions and the Vikings, to great football, the kind of things where when you get that chance for a game-winning drive, you get it ready, right? You look at the 49ers game last year. Jordan Love had a good game. He played solid football, but he wasn't great. When the moment came, he threw an interception on a bad pass. Game was over. So that's going to be what it takes. As you say, I don't think this team's any worse than last year. I don't think their ceiling's any lower. I don't think their floor's any lower. But you need Jordan Love when the moment comes to be able to step up and have those like career-defining moments where it's like, we need you, Jordan. Aaron Rodgers had a lot of those where the Packers turned to Aaron Rodgers. I know in the playoffs at the end, it soured, but we're Vikings fans. How many moments did Aaron Rodgers have where the Packers stepped up and said, buddy, we need you? And he stepped up and delivered an incredible moment. They need some of that from Jordan Love.
And I think they're a better team this year, too, than they were last year. The difference is last year they were red hot. Like they were playing better at this point in the season last year, or they've been playing better for like mid-November through the 49er game. So I agree with you. I think it's about recapturing that ceiling, and someone will do it. Like one of these teams will do it in the NFC, and whoever it is probably going to go to the Super Bowl. So I think Packer fans don't have any reason to think it's not going to be them, because they've shown between all these teams, they've shown a great ability to reach their ceiling when it matters. Jordan Love has done it for one season, and I think they're trending in a better direction than maybe anyone except Minnesota pre-Chicago game, right? Like the Vikings are red hot. They're playing great football. Philadelphia, they're trending up as well, but I think the Packers are on that same trajectory where we're going to see all these teams competing in big-time games soon. And if Jordan Love's playing superstar football, I might pick the Packers to win a few of those games. So I'm with you. I'm with you for the most part. And it's a good point. Saying Jordan Love needs to be a superstar is also a little bit because I don't know. I trust the defense, but I don't trust them the same way that I would trust like Kansas City's defense, for instance. It's a good unit. It's not a great unit. And for that reason, you will need Jordan Love to score some points. So, all right. I think that was a good show, Ziggy. Talking about some contenders. We had some fun there. And let's watch the Vikings beat the crap out of the Bears. People will know whether or not we're going to be happy by the time this comes out.
No, if the Vikings lose this, we may have to have a reaction come out.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks again for listening.